Every year, around 8,000 New Zealanders are affected by a head injury. Lizzie Charleston is one of them.
She had her life mapped out, strutting the catwalks of Milan, New York. One day she went for a horse ride and she fell off.
This glamorous young model gives us an insight into what's known as the invisible disability, a brain injury.
Sometimes I feel like a spectator of the good times, because sometimes I'm literally just there, standing and smiling, having the picture taken for Facebook or whatever, and all the social pages.
Looks can be deceptive, and Elizabeth Charleston knows all about that. As a former top model, she's used to putting on the makeup and creating a perfect image. But 5 years ago, a horse riding accident left her with a head injury, an invisible injury.
Yeah, I'm just sick of pretending that everything's fine. It's not fine. I'm not getting better. One of the things the head injury took away from me was my confidence. To even be able to walk down the street, I've had times where I've had to walk behind either my mother or my cousin Judith at a horse show one time. I was having to hold her jersey and walk a couple of steps behind her, and that's pretty demoralising.
Lizzie Charleston still models as a plus-size model for national brands. She's on the books of leading agency 62 Models. She's an eloquent spokeswoman for the cause of head injury.
It's just growth, education, awareness.
She still rides, though not as intensively as pre-injury. To look at Lizzie, many would say there's nothing wrong with her, but it's that seemingly invisible nature of head injuries that is one of her problems.
Sorry, I forgot the question. Sorry, I'm quite tired and fatigued now.
It's hard to see what's wrong with Lizzie until you spend a couple of days with her.
I'm not giving you the answers that you want, I'm sorry. The little brain's not... I've gone off on a tangent, sorry, I've forgotten what I was talking about. What was the question? Sorry, this is embarrassing. Okay. I know it's pathetic, I'm sorry, but I just need some time out. I'm getting cotton mouth now as well. And I nearly fell off the chair. Ooh, okay. So that's sorry. I try to be very articulate and precise when I speak. But even now, I'm just sort of talking a lot, using up quite a bit of oxygen, getting a little bit shallow in my breathing, and the little brain is winding down now. It's like the mouse in the cage with its wheel. And this mouse is getting a bit tired.
Lizzie has lived the life that young girls dream of. As a teenager, the girl from small-town Morrinsville really was a top model. She was talent spotted at 15 and selected to compete in the worldwide search for the International Supermodel of the Year.
And next thing we know, I got a fax from Ford Models in New York inviting me to represent New Zealand at the Supermodel of the World contest. So I did that, made the final 14, which was very exciting at the time, to represent New Zealand. And then went on to New York.
London, Milan, Los Angeles, she travelled the world for modelling assignments.
There's a lot of things that people in New Zealand don't even know that Lizzie did. With the first week she went to Italy, she got 5 covers. They were never shown. We never saw those in New Zealand.
She always knew the modelling life wouldn't be forever. Lizzie comes from the heartland of New Zealand. Her parents own a dairy farm in Morrinsville, and riding has been a lifelong passion. 5 years ago, she returned to New Zealand and combined modelling assignments with equestrian events.
I live 27 steps from my parents' house on their farm down in the Waikato. Lovely little cottage, and would I love to be independent and living in the city or something? Love to, but realistically, I've got to know that my mother Jocelyn is close by to say, just so she can monitor things and like, how are you today? Have you hit your head today? Have you done something stupid? So how long that's going to go for, I don't know.
It was at a show 5 years ago that events took her on a completely unplanned path.
To this day, I still have absolute recall, like it's happening now, of what happened. I was on a young horse. I'd taken it to a small event just to bring it on and give it some training, and I was competing. I'd come out of a class. It was being a bit of a brat child that day, and in the collecting ring, it started to rear up. And being a reasonably competent rider, I just put the legs on and pushed it forward, gave it its rein, and was like, no, come on, get on with it. And it did 3 of these sort of bounds forward, and this horse then flipped itself on its side.
He just spun round and he went straight over backwards. Lizzie was still in the saddle, and it was in the middle of summer, the ground was rock hard. And she was knocked out cold.
That's when it goes black. And then a minute or two later, I came to, and I was lying flat on my back, and I thought, oh, this isn't right. And I had all these faces sort of popping over in front of me. And I thought, right, I've got to let them know that I'm okay. So I was like, what can I say? And all I could see in front of me was the sky. So I said, to try and sound really switched on and I'm okay, I said, oh, look at the pretty blue sky.
I sort of regret now that I didn't let it go in that ambulance, I think, in that helicopter. I think things might have been taken a lot more seriously. She had excruciating pain in her head, and it got worse.
So we got home, and I said to Mum, I'm not feeling too good. So she took me to hospital. There was quite a bit of concern with the neck as well, so I was put in the cage that they put you in, and this was up at Waikato Hospital. They actually reduced the hours of observation that I was meant to be under. They backdated it to the time of the accident and sent me home that night. And I remember, before I left the hospital, I was pleading with the doctors and the nurses, please help me. There is something really wrong with me.
We're back here. We're back.
In New Zealand, 170 people a week are admitted to hospital with a head injury. It's one of our leading causes of disability.
Can you do those?
At first, Lizzie seemed to recover from her serious injuries. But gradually, everyone realised the head injury had left a legacy.
Walk a mile in my shoes. It sucks, I hate to say it, but it's what I've managed to manufacture myself to make it look okay, but it's unfortunately that's probably been the worst thing I could have done for myself because it's not okay. I'm living day to day, hour to hour, just monitoring my health. Have I done something stupid? Have I hit my head? Do I need to have my nana nap, which I have to have most days? How am I feeling? I can't drive to places. After about 10 kilometres, I start getting tired.
Things that do embarrass me some days, but it's the injury. She doesn't recognise people. Some people she's known all her life. Mum, who's that? And that's why she so leans on me quite a lot. But said going out, Lizzie's has been a very outgoing girl. Meet anybody, meet royalty, you name it. She's not frightened to walk up to John Key and say, hello, I'm Elizabeth Charleston. Some days she can still do it, and other days, oh no, let's let go away.
Oh, it's pathetic. It's so pathetic and frustrating to live with these boundaries.
It's very soothing for the soul to look around and see the beautiful green grass and the hills everywhere.
I agree.
So,
Lizzie also finds that at 34 she can't live alone.
but no, I'd be lost without Mum, and I need to know that Mum's there. Part of the head injury thing is insecure, but I need to know where Mum is. Like, she's spent a couple of days down in Wellington for a meeting, and I was like counting down the days. I mean, I'm 34, for goodness sakes, grow up.
Yeah. But what's it like when she's not here? How do you cope? How do you get on?
I just pace myself. I'm fine, but it's always nice to know that she's coming back. So the boot's on the other foot now. It used to be me going away with the modelling jobs and being overseas, and now she goes away and I'm all fretting. So
It's come full circle.
I don't know, up to you if you want to wash those legs now.
It's a fact that a head injury significantly alters the brain's ability to regulate moods. Emotional outbursts, depression, and flying off the handle are all part of the consequences.
I'm on to put my riding pants on then. People look at Mum and I doing our things and they think, oh, we get on so well. My God, would have had some hell-raising fights. Even in the stable, her holding a horse, she wasn't doing it properly and I went off my nut. And that was the head injury talking.
And she became quite unreasonable. I mean, you just couldn't believe a person could be, some people would say, rude. And that would have been it really coming to a head, I think. But now she can try and control this rage, we'll call it. Counting power poles and which one I'll run into, all that sort of, to us would be silly. But she has those days. She has to come back and get in her little house and just keep quiet.
It's pretty much every second day I come in and apologise to you, isn't it, Mum?
Right, well, wasn't a few hours.
Because the thing is, I know when the head injury is responsible for my behaviour, because I'd like to think I'm quite a reasonable person. So that's why it's quite frustrating when I do behave in a certain way. Oh, God. Sorry, I'm trying to get those boots on. I had a spur in the middle of one. You're going to have to help me with this.
Lizzie experienced classic symptoms of a head injury. She couldn't remember people
Tommy.
and events. She had constant headaches.
Mum, do you want
She was continually exhausted by everyday life.
to do that? The dog's barking. That can freak me out. I can get into an absolute foul mood and want to actually shoot the dogs, the greyhounds that we have out the back. Oh, I like the string. That's really... And that can send me off a complete tangent. It's stupid things. So... Tubby! It's like being the 80-year-old grumpy old man, sort of sitting at home, sort of complaining about the neighbours or something. I'm at that point where anything can sort of set me off a bit.
It took 2 years and rounds of visits to specialists to get the final diagnosis, a brain injury. But no one can say whether there will be further improvement. Lizzie is well aware she's not alone.
Come on, Tubby. I can't be the only person in New Zealand or in the world that's living like this, where by all appearances things look fine. It's pretty horrible. And I think we've got to talk about head injury and have the awareness out there, because there's that sense of shame if someone's lost their marbles or they're not quite right in their head.